Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the ultimate clash of titans in the aquatic hobby. In one corner, we have the incredibly popular, vibrant, and virtually indestructible houseplant, the pothos. And in the other corner, the beloved yet notoriously messy, super high bioload goldfish. So what happens when you combine them? Well, it turns out to be a really fascinating collision of botany and biology.
Okay, let's dive into this. It kind of sounds like magic, right? Taking just a regular terrestrial vine that's probably sitting on your bookshelf right now and using it to naturally purify the water in a closed goldfish tank. But as we'll see, relying on nature to do your heavy lifting is a complex, absolutely beautiful, and sometimes hazardous balancing act. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the goldfish waste problem, look at Pothos as a biological filter, unpack the whole toxicity debate, uncover some hidden risks, and wrap up with best practices for putting it all together. All right, Section 1, the goldfish waste problem. To really appreciate our biological superhero, we first got to understand the villain every goldfish keeper is fighting.
Look, every aquarist knows about ammonia, right? It's that immediate toxic poison from fish waste. But your standard aquarium filter handles that pretty well by converting it into something called nitrate. The problem is, nitrate is a silent killer. It doesn't wipe out your tank overnight, but it slowly accumulates week after week. High nitrates cause chronic stress in your goldfish, totally wreck their immune systems, and act like rocket fuel for those awful green water algae blooms. To fight it, hobbyists are locked into this exhausting, never-ending cycle of partial water changes.
That brings us to Section 2, Pothos as a biological filter. This is where our ordinary houseplant steps into the ring and offers a really radical, completely natural shortcut. The fancy term for this is biological nutrient export, or BNE for short, and it's actually a highly sophisticated setup. See, Pothos doesn't just tolerate all that dangerous nitrate waste floating around in your goldfish tank, it literally craves it. The plant uses those exact dissolved nitrogen compounds as high-octane fuel for its own rapid growth. It's aggressively pulling the waste straight out of the water column to build new leaves and vines. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why a houseplant completely outperforms underwater plants. Now, you might be wondering, why not just use normal aquarium plants? Well, fully submerged aquatic plants really struggle to get enough carbon dioxide because it's super scarce underwater. Pothos, on the other hand, has its leaves sitting right up in the open air where atmospheric CO2 is everywhere. That massive advantage lets Pothos photosynthesize and grow at a radically faster pace, which means it has a way bigger appetite for your goldfish's nitrate waste. Get this, 1.7 grams. That might not sound like much to you and me, but in the aquarium world, that is a staggering number. Research shows that under optimal LED lighting, Pothos can remove roughly 1.7 grams of nitrogen per month for every single square foot of foliage. In fact, hobbyists have reported that by combining Pothos with other fast growers, like sweet potato, they've actually been able to reduce their required water changes by up to 80%. Which naturally leads us to Section 3, the toxicity debate. If Pothos is such a miracle filter, why do some aquarists strictly forbid it in their tanks? Is it actually a toxic trap just waiting to harm our fish?
The actual science behind this so-called poison is wild. Pothos doesn't use a chemical toxin at all. It uses a mechanical defense system. The plant contains these highly pressurized cells called idioblasts, and they're packed with microscopic, rigid needles made of calcium oxalate. When a predator, or, a very curious goldfish, bites into the plant, those cells rupture and literally fire tiny needles right into the soft tissues of the mouth. It is an intense physical irritant. But how does that actually play out in a real tank? As one goldfish keeper on Reddit hilariously pointed out, goldfish are opportunistic foragers. They'll try to eat pretty much anything. But the mechanical irritation from those calcium oxalate needles usually acts as a super effective natural deterrent. A fish might nibble the roots once, realize it feels awful, and just back right off. It effectively creates a self-enforcing, goldfish-proof plant. Now, this brings us to a pretty famous debate in the community, the Luke's Goldies incident, where a popular creator tragically lost 3 fancy goldfish in a tank that had pothos in it. The internet was totally split. Was it plant poisoning? Well, analyzing the sources neutrally, we really have to look at all the variables. 3 fancy goldfish shoved into a 25-gallon volume is widely considered highly overstocked. In small water volumes with huge bioloads like that, literally any minor interruption in your filtration can cause rapid, lethal ammonia toxicity. While rotting pothos leaves definitely can release concentrated sap into the water, sudden massive ammonia spikes are statistically the much more common culprit in tightly stocked systems. Moving into Section 4, hidden risks and resource drains.
because beyond the whole toxicity debate, there are some unintended consequences to dropping an aggressive, fast-growing vine into an enclosed box of water. So the crucial point here is that pothos is basically a massive nutrient hog. It is so brutally efficient that it can crash your nitrates from 80 parts per million down to absolute zero in no time. If you have other slower-growing aquatic plants in the tank, like Anubias or Java fern, the pothos will literally starve them to death by monopolizing all the nitrogen, potassium, and trace minerals. Plus, in high-pH goldfish tanks, pothos often needs extra iron supplements just to stay alive itself. And here is another really sneaky hidden risk: nocturnal oxygen depletion. During the day, pothos is awesome. It produces oxygen. But when the lights go out, photosynthesis completely stops, while the plant's respiration keeps right on going. At night, that massive root system turns into an oxygen thief, sucking critical O2 right out of the water and dumping CO2 back in. In a heavily stocked goldfish tank, this can lead to dangerously low oxygen levels in those early morning hours.
So how does pothos actually stock up against other terrestrial options? Well, if you want absolute zero-stress safety, the spider plant gives you moderate nutrient export with virtually no toxicity risk. On the other end, if you want pure brute force filtration, the sweet potato is extreme, though it takes a lot of constant management. Pothos sits right there in the sweet spot. Rapid growth, very high nutrient export, but with that moderate oxalate toxicity risk that you just have to carefully manage. Finally, Section 5, Best Practices for Integration. Let's talk about how to turn all this theory into an actionable, safe strategy for your own tank.
First things first, you absolutely cannot just buy a potted pothos at the hardware store and chuck it into your aquarium. The soil roots will instantly rot and ruin your water quality. You gotta follow these steps. Take a fresh cutting, let it callus over in a separate glass of dechlorinated water for about a week, and meticulously, I mean meticulously, wash off any trace of soil or those potentially lethal nursery pesticides. Only when you see fresh, bright white aquatic adapted roots is it actually safe to introduce to your goldfish. Once it's ready, how do you mount it? The golden rule here is non-negotiable. Roots in the water, leaves in the air. If the leaves get submerged, they rot and release all those irritating oxalates. You can use simple suction cups to control the depth, or drop them right into a hang-on back filter. They'll keep an eye out because the roots can eventually tangle up and clog the motor impeller. A lot of clever hobbyists use plastic egg crate lids to weave the roots through, or even utilize custom 3D printed baskets. Just make sure any 3D plastics you use are aquarium safe, like PLA or PETG. And here is the vital final step of this whole shebang: root pruning. Pothos roots grow incredibly thick and dense, and eventually they're going to steal precious swimming space from your goldfish. But trimming them isn't just about aesthetics. When you cut off a chunk of those roots and throw them into the compost bin, you are physically, permanently exporting that captured nitrogen waste completely out of your aquatic ecosystem for good. So, summarizing this double-edged sword, on the pro side, you're getting unbelievable, completely natural nitrate reduction and creating a beautiful, enriching jungle environment for your fish. But on the con side, the calcium oxalate means you have to be meticulous about keeping the leaves bone dry, and you have to actively manage the fact that it will aggressively outcompete your other underwater plants and potentially drain your tank's oxygen at night. Which leaves us with one final thought. Mixing pothos and goldfish is an incredible intersection of botany and limnology. It offers a level of rock-solid ecological stability that standard plastic filters just simply cannot match. But as we've seen, it's definitely not a set-it-and-forget-it shortcut. Looking at the evidence, are you prepared to step up and be both an aquarist and a gardener to master this complex, deeply rewarding balance in your own home?